20-minute call, and we're very respectful of your time, so we're going to keep it to 20 minutes. And we want to give you not just enough information to be dangerous, but we want to give you enough information to be decisive, because fear can paralyze us, but there's no future in that. We need to focus on action. And so this call will be centered on helping you to know how you can act and what you can do. What is the next step you can take as a result of what we're going to share today? Our speaker today is Tom Prothro, and I've known Tom Prothro since 1982 when he came back to his hometown of Tyler, and we both worked in the same CPA firm. And over the last 38 years, we've become very close friends. Tom is a partner in the Tyler CPA firm of Prothro, Wilhelmi and Company. He graduated from the University of Texas at Austin and had an accounting degree from there. Tom has also served in the highest role among Texas CPAs when he was the presiding officer of the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy. He did that for 3 years. Few people have the credentials and the credibility of Tom Prothro, and it's an honor for Express to welcome him to you today. Tom?
Stand by, Tom. Sorry about that. Trying to unmute your friend.
Okay, I guess you can hear me now. Thank you. I'm going to share a screen, so I hope everybody can see that. Okay, so Rocky asked me to just talk a few minutes about the Payroll Protection Act, the Paycheck Protection Act that I've been helping my clients with here lately the last few days. So I can share with you what we've been helping them with through the application process and give you an idea of what's being involved. And there's just not a lot of details yet, but I can give you a little bit of experience that I've had. So over here on the screen, there's a flyer from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that I think is pretty helpful. And it talks about the CARES Act that was passed last Friday, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. They allocated $350 billion to this Paycheck Protection Act. And so going down this, am I eligible? So it's targeted at small businesses. Small businesses are defined to fewer than 500 employees. It also includes sole proprietors and independent contractors. So if you're a small business, more than likely you will qualify. What are the lenders looking for? They're looking for, number one, uncertainty in the current economic conditions. And if you're not uncertain right now, you're in the minority. Number two, the borrower will use the loan proceeds to retain workers and to maintain payroll. So if you believe that you can maintain your workers and maintain your payroll, this loan is for you, particularly because it may be forgiven, tax-free. So if you qualify, if you're a small business and you are uncertain on the current economic times, you need to figure out how much you can borrow. Your borrowing is based on your payroll costs as defined. And so those payroll costs are salaries and wages broadly defined. That includes family leave, vacation, sick leave, that kind of pay. It also includes group health care benefits and retirement benefits, state and local taxes on wages like TWC tax. So you would add all that up, and that's your payroll cost, and you need to reduce it by any compensation for individuals over $100,000. So once you reduce that, then you've got a total payroll cost that you can multiply by 2.5, and that's your maximum loan. So I thought we'd go to the loan application. You can just see that. Later I'll show you where you can get this. It's a 2-page form. It's pretty easy. So right here in this box, about 1/3 of the way down, average monthly payroll. So you need to calculate that as we just talked about. You multiply that by 2.5 times, and that goes in this box here. That's your maximum loan amount. And notice to the right of that, it's also asking for your number of jobs. So once you do that, and all the, you have different questions to answer, and then every owner that's 20% or greater has to certify to all these different, there's 10 different places where you have to certify. Once you've certified that and signed it, you have to begin looking at the documentation that you need to attach, and that's where the devil's in the details. So we'll get back to that in a minute. So we talked about that you're eligible, what are the lenders looking for, and how much can you borrow. So let's just pretend like you received the loan, they granted you the loan. It's possible that that loan would be forgiven, and there's a calculation. So over the next 8 weeks after the loan origination, you got to track certain costs, and you got to track your employees. So for 8 weeks, if you pay, one category is the payroll cost as we defined it. You also can include interest on a mortgage obligation or a rent obligation, leasing arrangement, and also payments on utilities, broadly defined as electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or interest. And then there's some other with tipped employees, but that's not as prevalent. So if you track those expenses over the next 8 weeks, and your employee count maintains, and your salary count maintains, it's likely that some or all of this can be forgiven tax-free. So it becomes a grant, and that's really, really good news. But of course, as I mentioned, the devil's in the details. I want to show you, if we're talking about what do you attach to the 2-page application. The 2-page application probably take you 20 minutes to prepare. But the required documentation can take a long, long time, and it needs to be complete. Here is an example of yesterday I received this document request from a local bank. 20 minutes ago, I received this from the same local bank. They expanded what they want, and I think that will continue because they're trying to figure out what exactly does the SBA want. Excuse me. I lost a tooth yesterday. I glued it in, but it didn't stay. So let's go through some of the things. The first thing that they wanted are all the 941s. And so you got to get all those together for 2019. They want payroll reports, they want 1099s, and they want documentation for all your health insurance premiums. They don't really say what that is, but they want documentation. And then they want documentation for retirement plan funding. Here's another one from another local bank yesterday. Well, they want the TWC reports. They want the W-3s. They want the W-2s. They want the invoices for the health insurance premiums. They want to prove your business has been in operation, copies of the 941s, and summary payroll reports. Then we go to the latest one from the other local bank. They want financial statements. They want all the articles of incorporation, bylaws, certificate of funding, owner's driver's license for everybody that's 20% or more. And then all the other things that the other banks want, 941s, payroll summary reports, 1099s. So getting all the required documentation together is changing. It's difficult and it's time consuming. And it needs to be complete because when you submit this, if the SBA bounces it back or the lender bounces it back, Do you start all over? Do you lose your place in line? It's going to be very important, because what I'm hearing is that the 350 billion may not last very long. So tomorrow is the date that, if you're not an independent contractor or self-employed, you can submit your application to an authorized SBA lender, and they can submit it to the SBA on your behalf. So it's important that you know that these funds may be limited, and that you need to do your best to get a complete packet together as soon as you can. So here on the screen, I've got just a little summary, and then we may have time for questions. You can download the 2-page application form from the U.S. Treasury's website. 2 pages. You calculate your average monthly payroll, as we discussed. You complete the 2-page application, and then you attach the required documentation. I think that's going to take the longest amount of time to get all the documentation, and that you need to check with your lender and say, what exactly do you want? And please let me know if that changes. You'll submit that to the authorized lender, again, beginning tomorrow. If you're a self-employed, that's next Friday on the 10th. Then if you are successful in obtaining a loan for the 8-week period, you got to track your employee count, your FTEs, plus you track the certain expenses we talked about, the payroll cost as defined, interest or lease payments, and then payments on utilities. And if you maintain your employee count and you spend during that 8-week period your loan amount, odds are that can be forgiven tax-free, which is really an amazing thing. So that's my prepared remarks. Rocky or Adam, do we want to take some questions?
Absolutely. So Tom, there's several questions in the chat here. Are you able to see those?
Okay, so one question was, what if you already filled out an application online? To my knowledge, if you filled something out online, you did not fill it out for the PPP. You probably filled it out for another disaster loan, because I looked at that and started filling that out. I don't believe that that's the right application. Next one, if your company pays both W-2 and 1099, how should this be handled on the loan application? Well, those are both defined in your, when you calculate your average monthly payroll. So just include them both. They are acceptable. Another one on the EIDL, which is another small business loan. Can it be used for retroactive allowable revenue losses prior to application related to reduced revenue to COVID-19? I don't know the answer to that. There is some discrepancy whether, if you get an EIDL loan, a separate loan, can you also get a PPP loan? I have seen it said yes and no in writing. So I don't know the great answer to that. Says, are we able to apply for the PPP for only the amount of the projected allowable expenses after origination? And the answer is, that's not what the instructions say. The instructions say to calculate it for 2019, your average monthly payroll cost as defined, and that's your maximum loan amount when you multiply that by 2.5. Let's see, got another. What if your company has a furlough after application is submitted? Does that affect your funding? The answer is, it doesn't necessarily affect your funding, but it can affect your forgiveness calculation, because and again, that calculation is evolving. But if you furlough people and your employee count goes down and your payroll amount goes down during the 8-week period, the amount of forgiveness will be reduced. And that's a calculation that is evolving. I've seen at least a couple of different calculations how that goes. But it will have a negative impact on that. this is a good time to say, even if it's not forgiven, this loan is really, really pretty good. It's a maximum 4% loan. There's no repayment for 1 year, and it can be stretched out over 10 years. So even if you don't have it forgiven totally, it's still a pretty good loan in these economic times. There's a question about pursuing the national security funds. I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry. Question about including payroll costs. It mentions excluding payroll taxes. So you don't get credit for any federal payroll tax in this calculation. So you start with salaries and wages. You don't include payroll taxes, so you don't have to subtract out payroll taxes. The only thing you get to include are TWC taxes paid on wages to the state of Texas. It says FICA matching, you don't include any federal taxes. How long are they expecting it to take for the loans to be funded? I talked to a banker yesterday, and the whole system is clogged. If you're looking around to try to find a lender that can file for you tomorrow, the system is pretty well clogged. So that's going to be difficult to answer. I know Congress wanted the funds out there quickly to help the economy. I think it's going to be, it's going to take a little while, but I don't know the exact answer to that. Is the income portion per employee that exceeds $100,000 deducted, or the entire salary? It's the amount that you included in step one. And I encourage my clients, we're going to include all salaries paid in step one, and then back out anything over $100,000 per employee that was during that time period. There's a question about 2-page PPP form earlier this week and asked for the $10,000 advance. I'm not familiar with the $10,000 advance, I'm sorry. Will we be committed to pay interest to the bank for the amount over the 8-week usage if we do not use beyond the forgiveness period? Let me see if I understand that. If there's a loan amount that is not forgiven during that 8-week period, yes, interest begins at a maximum of 4% after that period, but there's no repayment for at least until the end of this year. And then it can be stretched out over 10 years.
Tom, let me jump in real quick if I may. We promised everybody this would be a 20-minute presentation, and we're at that mark. And so I want to give people permission to hop off if they'd like. Let me ask you a quick question, Tom. Can we email this presentation to all participants when we're done? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Happy to.
And if you'd like to continue answering questions, I'm sure everybody would love that. We've got about 10 plus questions here. What do you think?
I can go for another few minutes.
Okay, appreciate that. I think
Sure.
we're at Art's question about how does a big business apply for aid? Maybe 500.
Okay. So I guess if we're talking about a big business that is over 500 people, the PPP is not for you. And since I've been studying just the PPP, I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry. Do you know if self-funded health insurance plan expenses would qualify as compensation? I don't know the answer to that either. I'd hate to guess. If we send back the unused amount over the forgiven 8 weeks portion, are we obligated? I would assume, and again, I don't know the answer to this, but it's like any other loan. If you repay the loan, you have no balance due. So I would think if it were me, I had the ability to repay and it wasn't forgiven, I think I would go ahead and repay to minimize any of the interest at a maximum of 4%. How do we find local lenders? On the SBA website, there was a way to search for local lenders. But what I understand is in the past, you might have had what they call preferred SBA lenders, and there were a few around the East Texas area. But now the banks are being opened up to be an SBA lender. They're not preferred SBA lenders, but they're new SBA lenders. So many of the local banks are handling the PPP. So if you've got a bank that you use, you may ask them, are you funding the PPP? And odds are a lot of these local banks are doing it, but they've never done it before. And they may be a little bit slow, and they may not understand everything. And that may be one reason why we're getting different documentation requirements. So I would check with your favorite bank and see what the documentation requirements are currently and try to fulfill those. One question, can the funds be used for an equipment lease, or is it only for real estate lease cost? It's my understanding that's only for real estate. That would be similar. They're letting you count your lease for your office, but if you own it, they're going to let you count the interest. So I don't believe it would be for equipment. This last one, that's a pretty involved calculation. I don't think I can answer that right now. I think that's all I have, Adam, unless you can think of something else.
Tom, I sure appreciate you taking time to answer some questions today. And just for all the participants there, we'll send this recording to you. And I know, Tom, that your firm would be happy to engage any of these folks as a client if you could help them.
Absolutely. And, you know, all the CPAs around here are getting up to speed on there, and they can help as well. We're all in this together. And
I am seeing some questions about sending the PDFs that you've presented today. Will we be able to send that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. We'll get that out to everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here today. If there's anything we can do, please reach out to us. You can reach me at adam.morrow@expresspros.com, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Nice guys.